Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Sybiz 25 webinar. I'm Ben O'Brien, and whether you're tuning in live or watching the recording, a warm welcome. And this should take around about half an hour, so we'll jump straight into it. And what we'll be covering today is, no surprises, Sybiz Vision and VisiPay 25, and that includes the apps as well, and just some general updates. And we've had a few questions through the registration process that we've dealt with one-on-one, and then there's a few common topics that we'll cover throughout this session as well. So thank you for those questions during the registration process. Okay, just some general information, irrespective of whether you're using Vision or VisiPay or both. It's the same minimum SQL version requirement for Sybiz 25, and that is SQL Server 2017. And SQL Server 2022 is the latest version, and we do recommend, if you do need to upgrade, always go to the latest version. And so that's been in place for a couple of years now. So if you are on an earlier version of SQL and on an earlier version of Sybiz, then you will need to take that into consideration as well prior to upgrading. We have added to both products some extensions for Microsoft SQL Security. So this is just where SQL has increased its security possibilities. We've just basically done a pass-through of that as well. So this is obviously fairly technical, but we're just communicating it in case it is something of interest to you. If it's not something that you recognise, then obviously it's not of interest, but just communicating it for the small number of people that will understand what that's about and whether it's relevant to them. So we had a few questions via registration, as I said, and so some people using the web API have asked whether that requires an update as well, and yes, it certainly does. And it's always good to check that when you are upgrading. Otherwise, if you have things like websites that leverage the web API, or you're using the apps, then you'll find you'll get in a bit of strife if you don't update that web API as well when it's required. Someone has, a few people have also asked about whether we're covering the cloud and on-premise, and essentially it's the same product whether you're cloud hosted or on-premise. So a few people were a bit confused about that. So hopefully that clears that up. And yes, we are having more masterclass webinars. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well with some more detail. So I know that a lot of people have been interested in those sessions as well. And as I said, there were some specific questions that were dealt with one-on-one. So into Sybiz Vision, apologies because there's a lot of different topics that we're covering here, and not everything's going to be relevant to everyone. So we won't spend too much time on one topic. So this first bit is just a little bit about the serial and lot number tracking in the inventory side of things. So apologies if it's not relevant to you, but essentially, just for the benefit of everyone that it is relevant to, it's something where the serial and lot tracking has been pretty robust, but it has had some things where if people sort of coloured outside the lines, you could get yourself into a situation with things like negative serial numbers or negative quantities of serial numbers existing. So essentially what we've done is we've identified a few of those practices that led to situations that perhaps were not desired, and prevented those from happening, and also provided some tools to fix up those situations. If you have done something unconventional in the past, you can now fix those things up through the stock take process. So up until recently, some of those things have had to be dealt with via stock transfers rather than stock take, but we've kind of flipped the script on it, so that stock take is the place to go to resolve some of those funky issues that you may have got yourself into with the serial number tracking in particular. The tracking dialog, so when you go to do transaction processing, whether you're generating serial numbers or selecting serial numbers that already exist, that's had a bit of a behavior tweak, so it's more intuitive now and more consistent with the way that it works throughout the software. So not much to write home about that, but just communicating that. If you've got muscle memory and suddenly the screens change on you in a couple areas, that is the reason why. And one of the things that we saw would happen quite frequently is people were generating serial numbers and transferring to another location when they already had serial numbers in the origin location, and that was leading to situations where there was a negative quantity of a serial number, even though the products were still in stock and negative stock was prevented. You could get in situations where you did have negative serial numbers, so you're no longer able to do that. And another thing that we saw is that some third-party add-ons were picking up a serial number for one product and attributing it to another. So not doing a check to see whether the serial number belonged to the actual product that they were trying to attribute it to. We've now made some changes in that regard as well to make those things less likely to occur. We have a new stock journal transaction as well. So this is just a sort of, if you do need to make value adjustments to your stock, you have the ability now to have a specific transaction for that, the stock journal. And I should just emphasize that this is for the value of stock only, not for quantity adjustments. And you can do upward and downward revaluations there as well. It does support, if you're doing it en masse, you can do an import from a spreadsheet, and you can nominate an account as well that you want to use as an override, general ledger account, I should specify there. And so that's just available as a new inventory transaction. There's a little YouTube clip on that topic as well that you can access via the What's New. We now have the ability to open items from the dashboard. So some may prefer to call that drill down, but so when you do see something that we describe as transactions or objects are things like customers and products and things like that, and transactions are pretty obvious what they are. But when you do have a dashboard, whether it's a custom dashboard or an out-of-the-box dashboard, where you are at the level within that dashboard, like the example that I have on the screen there shows some customers. So I can drill down into those customers. I can double-click to get to the viewer or the inquiry screen for those customers. Or if I hold the control key, then double-click, I go into the maintenance for those customers or products or whatever it may be that's on that panel of the dashboard that I'm interacting with. And just for completeness on that, naturally you do need to have the user rights to be able to do that in the first place. So that's I guess completes the functionality of the dashboards. That I guess the last little step where you, when designing a dashboard or a customization in general, sometimes you go, okay, well, I actually want to get to the detail, so I'm going to use a custom grid or a custom pivot rather than a custom dashboard. Now the custom dashboards have got that power to drill down even further. And there's a little YouTube clip on that as well. Yeah, this is another one of those topics where it might be a little bit over the top for some people, but specifically for those that understand and control the general ledgers. We have over the last few years increased the power of the automatic postings in terms of how they can support different types of transaction processing and different accounting policies. And one of the issues in that transition, Sybiz Vision historically has been a periodic system, but we've now made it so that it can either be periodic or accrual. And in that transition, because we are supporting both the periodic and the accrual, but also that transition from one to the other, the user interface was quite yeah, what would you say? It's a bit over the top in terms of we had to show all of the options all of the time, but now we've sort of put some stuff in the software to essentially have the user interface reflect the chosen posting method that you are using. So when you upgrade to version 25, because we don't know exactly what you're doing at this point in time, we set it to undefined, and so that will essentially give you the same user interface that you've seen when you go into things like product groups or product locations or job groups or service groups. And but if you do change to either the periodic or the accrual, then the user interface will only reflect the accounts that are relevant to that particular posting method. If you are going to make the change, we do recommend that you do consult with your external accountants, because you are going to be changing your accounting policies most likely, and that's something that you do need to have some discussions with your advisors on. There is also a new posting details report. So that helps if you are going to be transitioning from, say, periodic to accrual. It just gives you a list of all of the different posting accounts for all of the ledgers. You can filter it, etc., just to show those that are yet to be assigned, so you can make sure that you have all the relevant accounts in place. Otherwise, when you go to process a transaction, it will tell you that things haven't been put in place that need to be put in place to be able to process that transaction. So again, another reason to involve others in this particular process if you are going to be changing your posting method. Okay, we also have a sales price history graph. Now, this is something, if you go looking for it, you might be looking for it as a separate node within the product inquiry screen, but it is actually another chart option off of the charts node. So there's that little tab at the bottom there, so you can toggle between the sales chart and the price scale history. Now, I should just say that this is related to price scales only, so not things like special prices or contract prices or custom pricing. And it is based on the state of your computer at the time that you make the change. So if you did sort of change your processing date in the system, like you can change that to whatever date you want, and then say change the prices, it wouldn't be reflecting in this graph if you backdated it, because it only sort of takes up the actual calendar date at which the change was made. So that's how you'll see the price history. So you can have a look at the trends over time to do with your products and in the price scale prices for those products. There's the extensions to the suggest order process. So this is something that has evolved since it was introduced. It is quite a powerful tool. It does take a little bit of time to wrap your head around it. We have had a masterclass on this tool, and essentially what we've added this time around is the ability to increase, or in some respects decrease, the days to deliver. Otherwise known as your lead time. So there could be circumstances like there may be a lot of demand that is slowing things down. So you're at a peak demand from your suppliers, and so it's going to take longer across the board to get your stock in. There could be storms affecting transport that slow things down as well, or there could just be seasonal norms. It's going to take a little while longer for stock to get to you, and so you can put the days to deliver adjust figure in, and what that will do is it'll look at the days to deliver on the individual products, add on the adjustment, and then suggest the quantity that you need to order, taking into account that extra time with that adjustment that you're putting in as well. So again, as I said, it takes a bit of getting your head around the whole suggest order thing, but yeah, the takeaway here is that it just gives you that ability, just if there is something a little bit out of the ordinary and stock across the board is going to take longer to get to you, you can temporarily increase the days to deliver. And for those that have been archiving your customer statements and you want to sort of purge them out of your database when they're sort of a few years old, there is now an ability to do that through the cleanse customer statements off of the debtors utility menu, and you just nominate the date and the system will do the rest. So that's just helps you reduce the size of your database going forward. And a whole batch of enhancements as well that have gone into Sybiz Vision. So we won't talk necessarily about all of these, but just we'll jump around a little bit. So when you've used wizards in the past to update things within the software, so there's a whole heap of different wizards, say standard cost wizard, for example, there was no record within the application log that had occurred. So that is now being written to the application log. So if something changes and you're not quite sure what's happened in the past, if that was done via a wizard, you would have no idea that that process was done if no one fessed up to it. Now you're able to see that in the application log. There's also a confirmation when creating a new financial year. So we added that recently to the tax year because people on autopilot would sometimes get a bit click happy and close a period that they didn't want to necessarily do. So we're just making that a little bit harder now. So you do need to confirm that that is truly what you want to do, just because it is a little bit tricky to undo those mistakes if they occur. And yeah, one thing, if you are looking at the offsets node in customers and suppliers, we are now only showing those items that have been offset, not those that haven't been offset. So if you have been using that screen previously to have a look at what hasn't been offset, then just draw your attention to the financial tab or the financial node within customers and suppliers, where you'll be able to see the outstanding items there. And there's been a couple of extensions around service and manufacturing and job costing as well. And just jumping down to the one right down the bottom, some of the out-of-the-box reports have been redesigned to make them look a little fresher. People aren't printing stuff as much as they were previously. So we did keep the reports fairly sort of fairly light on in terms of how much ink there was on the page, respecting everyone's toner budgets in the past, but because people are generally sort of saving reports as PDFs these days, we've made them look a little bit prettier. So the reports that we've touched so far are generally around what we call our list reports, so the basic information rather than transactional. So the report that I mentioned previously about your postings, the new report associated with the postings, that is in the new design as well. So it looks prettier, and we'll use more ink if you choose to print it, but we are going to continue to pretty up the reports that ship with the software. And in case you missed it, earlier this year in version 24.10, we released consolidated general ledger reporting. We have had a masterclass on that as well, so you'll be able to, if that is something you're interested in, you can jump across onto our website and rewatch the masterclass there. And yeah, it goes without saying that consolidated general ledger reporting allows you to consolidate your general ledger reporting across related companies. And for those that are operating multinational groups, you are able to also have different base currencies and different financial years, and the system will sort of work everything out for you there as you consolidate. So pretty powerful new tool there that was released earlier in the year. On to Sybiz VisiPay now. And again, this is one of those that may not make a lot of sense for a lot of people, but it's just to give you some awareness about something that has taken a bit of time to do, a bit of re-engineering below the waterline, is to do what we call a 64-bit upgrade to Sybiz VisiPay. So essentially, the main difference is being a 64-bit program like Sybiz Vision is, it just allows the product to use more resources on the computer rather than being restricted to just a fraction of what's available. And the benefits of that is it gives more power, or allows the software to use more power within the computer, handle larger data sets, and also for larger employers, so for those with hundreds or thousands of employees, occasionally they'd get out of memory errors halfway through payroll processing and have to jump out of the program, back in and continue where they left off. That's far less likely to occur now, because it's really more than doubles the resources available on typical machines to allow VisiPay more resources to process with. And again, this slide here is probably not going to be relevant directly to too many people, but it's just one of those things that you may want to consider even if you don't understand it. So essentially, with 32-bit applications, they did install in a default location of the Windows C program files x86, blah, blah, blah. And the 64-bit version can happily live there. There's nothing wrong with that, but some people may want to sort of move it to where a 64-bit program should rightly live in just the normal C program files like Sybiz Vision does. and there's a little guide there. We do recommend that you have your business partners assist you with this. As I said, it's not necessary, but some people may want to do it. And certainly for a fresh install of Sybiz VisiPay, it will go to the C program files rather than the x86 version. So if you wanted to see the difference between, or if you were unsure whether you had the 64-bit version or not, if you Control-Alt-Delete and have a look at your task manager, if it is a 32-bit application, you'll see 32-bit in brackets. Otherwise, you won't see anything, which will mean that it's a 64-bit application. And just for completeness, if you are on a 32-bit operating system still, you won't see anything next to, you won't see the 32-bit, and you won't have the 64-bit version. But having said that, if you do have a 32-bit operating system, the software will still install on that as 32-bit. So yeah, apologies for the technical mumbo jumbo there for people that that's gone over their heads, but that has been the lion's share of the work that has been done with Sybiz VisiPay for version 25. One thing for those with leave management is we've added an available column to the leave application and approval process. And so essentially all of the other columns are as they were before. So we had the accrued, taken, requested, approved and balance columns there in previous versions. The available column, where that really comes into play is if someone sort of booked a bit of leave into the future. So they've got a, say, European trip in the middle of next year, but they want to take a couple of days off around Christmas. Sometimes it looked like they'd sort of maxed out their leave and had none available because they'd had all this approved leave in future. The available column helps you in those circumstances. Say, okay, based on where we're at today, how much leave do they really have? And then just makes those decisions easier rather than having to sort of do some mental gymnastics to work out what that impact of that European holiday in the middle of next year has on leave requests that come up in the interim. So that's what that's all about. And it probably makes a little bit more sense when you use the estimated leave column there as well. So that is a change in the leave request area of the software or leave management area. We have also made some improvements to the STP2 reconciliation report. So previously it would show all employees, but now we've restricted it to say, okay, well, let's just show you the employees that have been paid in the financial year for which you're running the report. Makes sense. And it can also now be used in report sets. So when you're doing your end of year report set, you can drop the STP2 reconciliation report into that as well. We've done some tidy ups as well of the leave payment type earning, and also the payment summary reconciliation report no longer hides salary sacrifice only employees. So some people are still hanging on to the old payment summary reconciliation report for dear life. So we've just toggled that. So if someone is salary sacrifice only, they will be reported there as well. On to the apps now. This will just be a couple minutes on the apps. So again, a lot of the work that's been going on has been below the waterline with the apps. So we're in the process of upgrading the framework. One of the joys of working with Microsoft technologies is you sort of get invested in a technology and then they turn around and say, oh yeah, we're going to replace it with this one now. And so we're having to go through that process of migrating the framework. That won't really mean anything to you. You might notice some subtle user interface differences as we migrate across. So with that, that should only hopefully be around the middle, and next year we should complete that process. But in the interim, the improvements in terms of functionality for version 25 are reasonably minor in the context, because as I said, the bulk of the work has been done under the waterline there. So in the service app, we've added 3 improvements there. So visibility of alternate contact numbers. So previously you only could have one contact number for the customer you're going out to see. So now you could have the mobile number of the person that is your contact at the customer site. The service item notes are now visible against the requests, and it's also possible to process purchase orders from within the service app as well. So similar to the functionality that's in the job app. Speaking of the job app, the main thing that we've done here is just enable jobs that relate to foreign currency customers to be performed within the job app. And we'll be making some further improvements going forward as well around that. And finally, the purchase app, the main change here is that if you had non-inventory or GL line types, you couldn't process the purchase requisition approvals within the app, and now all line types are supported in the purchase requisition approval process within the purchase app. And just a couple general updates just to finish off the last few moments. So as I said, the masterclass webinars, that series will be continuing into 2025. We do have the date for the next one, which will be the 7th of February. We're not exactly sure which topic we're going to choose for that one, but some of the things on the runway for next year, the general ledger and the postings, we'll have a deep dive into that, and some other things associated with the general ledger. The CRM module will have a focus on that, as we will with fixed assets. And then another one to do with user proficiency. So there's a lot of little hints and tips. It's surprising how many people don't know about the F1 key for the context sensitive help. And just on that, hit the F1 key, type in the word shortcut, and have a look at all the different shortcuts that are available to you when you're using Sybiz Vision. So we'll have a specific webinar, masterclass webinar on that topic as well next year. For those from a payroll perspective, so specifically Australian, I should say, irrespective of whether you're using VisiPay or not, Payday Super is a reality that is coming to us on the 1st of July 2026. Yeah, I will swear a lot if you ask me my true feelings on Payday Super. I'm not a big fan of, I'm obviously a fan of what it's trying to achieve, but the way they're going about it, I'm not a fan of. So essentially, from a Sybiz perspective, one change that will be necessary, so you will need to be upgrading your software as we move toward Payday Super, is that both the super liability and ordinary time earnings will need to be reported through STP2. So STP2, the standard as it currently sits, is we have the choice as to whether we want to report the super liability or the ordinary time earnings, or both. Sybiz at this point in time is only reporting the super liability. So we will need to make some changes to the software for you to specifically flag your pay items as OTE, so that we can total those up and report those through STP2 as we approach the time for Payday Super. The government is also getting rid of its small business superannuation clearinghouse. Yeah, that's quite surprising that they're doing that. They're basically saying, oh, this is going to be too hard. We'll leave it up to the broader community to deal with. So the government, with their nice hefty budget, they're running scared. So that's just something to be aware of if you are currently using the small business superannuation clearinghouse. And yeah, as I said, I'm not a fan of Payday Super. Essentially, for those that don't know what it is, I should have described that to start with. It's basically saying, okay, you're going to be paying the employee super on the same day that you pay them. And so there's some pretty tight deadlines to get everything done within that process. Unfortunately, the payroll software developers were underrepresented in the consultation. We did have some representation, but the super funds, who essentially, even though they're all for that noble cause of making sure employers pay the employee super, at the end of the day, their ulterior motive is they just want to get their hands on the money as soon as possible. And so they've been very big in this process to design the way Payday Super will work. So again, noble cause to make sure that employees aren't getting dudded out of their superannuation from dodgy employers. But it is overkill when considering that the majority of employers are doing the right thing, and essentially everyone's getting penalised for the sins of a few. We have also recently introduced our new corporate website, so this has been a complete rebuild from the ground up. Yeah, it's gone reasonably well, but as with all projects of this nature, there are some little quirks that have come about, and if you have encountered those, we do apologise, and thank you for being patient with us. We think we're pretty much through the rest of that now, and yeah, we are continuing to work with the company that designed the website for us to get those few last things ironed out. So have a look if you've not had the chance to have a squiz at the new website. And big news for Sybiz in 2025, we are celebrating 50 years, and I'm sick of people asking me if I founded the company, considering I was born only 2 years before. I would have been yeah, quite a smart 2-year-old. Yeah, it's a big milestone in the company. We started out as cyber systems programming Hewlett-Packard programmable calculators way back in 1975. And obviously the company's seen a lot through those times. We incorporated as Sybiz Software Proprietary Limited in 1981, and there'll be some more communication and celebration around the 50 years next year, but thank you very much for your continued support. And with that brings us to the end. So thank you very much for your attendance today. And if you do have any questions, you can just jump onto our new website, fill out the website contact form, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. We may direct you back to your Sybiz business partner if it's something fairly specific. But other than that, if there's something that you want a bit more clarification on, feel free to jump on the website and ping through a contact form, and we'll have a look at that for you. So with that, if you have tuned in live, all the very best for the weekend ahead, and all the best for 2025. Thank you again.